Okay, how's everybody today? Sorry, I normally I stop at a convenience store and buy a newspaper and go over the articles before the class, but the one I go to was being renovated. It seems like 7-Eleven recently, one by one, they renovate their stores. Do you know what renovation means? Yeah, to make it new again. So renovate, like sometimes in my building, my apartment building, they will have, I'll hear somebody working upstairs or downstairs, and I can tell that they are renovating their apartment building. You know, maybe they're changing the floors, or they're drilling something, or they're creating a new room or something. But renovate, like today when I went to my usual 7-Eleven, the sign was there, but it was empty, and they were doing some work. So we call that to renovate. You can renovate your house, you can renovate a store, a shop, but usually it's about a building. We use that word for buildings. So why don't we say it together, renovate. Renovate. And then if you want to make that into a noun, let's say it to it, renovation. Renovation. So you could say, right now my apartment is going through a renovation, or I am renovating my apartment. So today they were renovating my 7-Eleven, so I couldn't get a newspaper. Okay. Similar, I think. Remodeling is more like redecorating, you know. I think renovation is more extreme, you know. Usually if you're renovating something, you're really completely changing it. But if you remodel or redecorate something, maybe you're just changing the color of the walls, or you're putting new paintings in, or something like that. They're similar, but I think renovation is more drastic. So, yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the big story, of course. Everyone's talking about this. I was reading the news about this morning, and of course, it's all over the international media too. Well, China's angry about everything, so everything makes them angry. Yeah. So and honestly, it's a little bit tiring, right? Some of my American friends, when they read the news, they say, everything you do makes China angry. So basically, unless you do what the Gongchangdang wants you to do, they get angry, right? So it's a little bit like dealing with a child. And to be very honest, this is my personal opinion. China wants to be a great power, right? They want to be a world-respected power. When they get angry about all these things like this, it doesn't make them look like a great power. It makes them look like a very insecure, very paranoid power, someone who's always very scared about everything, right? If I was China and I wanted to be a great power, I'd just be like, okay, whatever, who cares, 随便, but you can see how they react to all these things. So to me, it shows that China, and I think this is true, it is very insecure. When you're insecure, what does that mean? You feel unsafe, right? You feel worried about everything. If someone has deep insecurity, that's how we say it, I have insecurity, or you feel insecure. That means that everything you're worried about. You're worried about, oh no, what's going to happen, or what's going to, this is going to harm me or something. So it's not a sign of confidence. It's kind of like the opposite of confidence. Paranoia. So that's the other word I just used. That's a good word too. I think I'm spelling this correctly. Or another as a xingnong, if we say they are paranoid, okay? So what does this mean? This is a good word. Well, it means you have it's almost like an unreasonable fear. You're afraid of everything. You think someone's trying to hurt you. So if someone is paranoid, I mean, this is actually a 精神病, it's or 神经病. It's actually a kind of problem where, maybe somebody thinks everyone's trying to hurt them, or everyone's trying to kill them, or everyone's trying to, attack them in a very kind of a crazy way, right? So, but often we use this word for other meanings too. If people are just overly fearful, or they're afraid constantly of something, we say you are paranoid, okay? Or paranoia, of course, is the 名词. They have paranoia, or they are experiencing paranoia, but you can say he is paranoid about, So, maybe, we use this word a lot. For example, maybe your friend is getting ready for his event. He's organizing an event, and he's worried about everything. He says, what happens if this goes wrong? Or what happens if that goes wrong? Or what happens if we forget this? And you say, oh, don't worry about it. You're being paranoid, okay? So this is a very good word. So I just said earlier, I said China, when it acts like this, it often acts like it's insecure and paranoid, right? They're fearful about everything. Okay, so why don't we say this together? Paranoia. I think I spelled that right. Paranoia. Paranoid. Paranoid. Yeah, this is actually, paranoid especially is a very common word. We use that a lot. We tell people, don't be paranoid, or we say he is paranoid about something. Okay, so here it says, Ty McCarthy meeting a milestone. What does a milestone mean? Yeah, I think we've learned this word before. But, if you drove, I mean, I don't see this much anymore, but in Taiwan, the very, very old roads, if you're driving, there's usually it's made out of cement or concrete. It's a little marker on the side of the road. It says how many, gongli or whatever. Now, if you're on the Gaosu Gonglu, like every 100 gongshi, there's a little sign that says, we can call that a milestone. Of course, in Taiwan, we don't use miles, we use kilometers, but we still use this term milestone. Long time ago, on roads, they would have these stones that mark how far the distance on that road. So when we say a milestone here, of course, it means a significant event, something that's important, right? So we have milestones. Of course, this is a little more like a diplomatic or political milestone, but we have milestones in our own lives, right? What would be an example of a milestone in your life? Well, not so much being healthy, because being healthy is just a general condition, but yeah, having a kid, having a child, that would be a milestone. A wedding, yeah, getting married, your birthday, your birthday is a milestone, right? It marks another year, right? So there's big milestones and there's small milestones. So those are good words. Now, earlier you just said another word that it's actually a little bit different. You used the word benchmark. That's an A. Benchmark is more like so for example, if you work for a company, a 公司, and they say for you to be promoted, go to the next level, here are some benchmarks that you have to meet. These are some goals. They're almost like goals, like 目标 that you have to meet. Or someone might say, what are the benchmarks for success in your life? Okay, you would say, well, I want to make so much money, or I want to buy a house, or I want to have those are, it's almost like goals or guidelines for your point in your life, or something. Here it would not be your life, but a relationship. Okay, so why don't we say it together? Milestone. Milestone. Benchmark. Benchmark. This word gets used a lot in business. We talk about business benchmarks, or he's setting new benchmarks for his company. Okay, we could say that. Okay, so of course this meeting is important. It's a milestone. It's significant. And then it says bipartisan support. President Tsai Ing-wen last week met with Republican and Democratic lawmakers and expressed her thanks for the U.S. support for Taiwan. We've said this word before, I think. What does bipartisan mean? Right, because bi means what? Two, right? And of course, you can see the word PARTISAN. party, like, Tang, right? So bipartisan means it's both. In America, this would mean what? Right, Democrats and Republicans. Okay, so if it's just one party, like only the Republicans supported her, that would be different. But this is bipartisan. Why don't we say it together? Bipartisan. Bipartisan. Okay. Now, if we want to express the idea that this idea or this effort or this support only is related to one party, then we simply use the word partisan. Okay. So if we say partisan support for this person or partisan support, that means that one party is supporting this idea. But if we say bipartisan, then it means both parties are supporting. I suppose, and I've never, to be honest, I don't know if I've ever seen this. I guess you could say tripartisan if there were three parties. But, often when we talk about countries like Taiwan or United States, we're often looking at two main competitors, two competing parties. Okay, so she met with these lawmakers. Of course, lawmakers means members of Congress. Just like in Taiwan, we also have lawmakers. And she expressed her support, or thanks for the U.S. support. So let's go on and read the article. It says, President Tsai Ing-wen was yesterday set to become the first Taiwanese president to meet with a U.S. House of Representatives Speaker on U.S. soil, as she was scheduled to meet with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Okay, so as you know, Kevin McCarthy is the replacement for Nancy Pelosi. Now, of course, the Speaker of the House is whoever is the biggest party, the party with the most seats in the House of Representatives. Prior to him, it was Nancy Pelosi because it was the Democratic Party. But as you probably remember, there was a recent election, and the Republicans got the majority in the House of Representatives. So therefore, he is now the House Majority Leader or the Speaker. Okay. And as I think we discussed this when Pelosi came to Taiwan, the Speaker of the House is important because technically, according to our Xianfa, our Constitution, he is the third highest person, he or she, the third highest person in the country. So if this has never happened, but if something were to happen to the president, then of course the vice president would become the leader. But if something happened to the vice president, then the Speaker would become the President of the United States. If something happened to the vice president, then the Speaker would become the President of the United States. Okay. So it says here, was yesterday set to become. Now, of course, when they wrote this article, it had not happened yet, right? So it's set to become means it's scheduled to become, it will become, or it's planned to become. So you can say he is set to become our president, okay? Or he is set to take over, means he's prepared to, or he's going to, or probably going to. So she was yesterday set to become the first Taiwanese president to meet with a U.S. House of Representatives Speaker on U.S. soil. Now, I think you know the word. What does soil normally mean? Dirt, yeah, ground, right? If you like to plant flowers and plants, you like to maybe work in your garden, you have to have soil, right? I guess now there's a certain kind of gardening that they do without soil. They use just water or artificial material. There's certain kinds of. My business partner in our office, he has all these plants growing in these special containers with water. There's no soil, but most plants grow in soil. But of course, here this means, what's the word soil mean here? What does it mean? Territory. Yeah, we say U.S. soil is U.S. territory. Okay, so let's say it together. Soil. Soil. Now, this word gets used in other ways. For example, if you say his clothes got dirty, you could say his clothes were soiled. Soiled. It means they're dirty. Okay. You can say he soiled his shirt when he fell down. Okay. It got dirty. It got dirt. It's almost like dirty, right? Because dirt is also like soil. So dirty, dirt, soil, soiled. Okay. So that's a similar word. Okay. So let's read this. President Tsai Ing-wen was yesterday set to become the first Taiwanese president with a U.S. House of Representatives on U.S. soil as she was scheduled to meet with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Okay. So here it says, Ty arrived in Los Angeles on Tuesday night after visiting New York, Guatemala, and Belize. She was scheduled to meet with McCarthy at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley at 10 a.m., McCarthy's office said. Now, I think you know this, but nothing happens. But anyhow, when they're finished being president, after their term is over, usually, I believe, almost every time, they have a group or organization that creates a presidential library. And that's a special library that is there to a collection of their works, their writings, pictures. It's almost like a memorial place, a place to remember a record of their presidency. So there's a Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. I'm sure there's the Bill Donald. Well, I don't know if Donald Trump has I don't think he has one yet. Usually it takes some time. Usually maybe 10 years later or something. Probably, I'm pretty sure there's a Bill Clinton Presidential Library. I think I haven't checked, but anyhow, most former presidents have this presidential library. I don't know if you go back far enough. Like if you went back 100 years ago, I don't know if they would have those for that old, that far back. But I think it's more of a 20th century creation. So most modern presidents, or maybe the last 50 or 60 years, they probably have a presidential library. So anyhow, this is the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley. That's in California. That's where they met. So she arrived in Los Angeles after visiting all these other places. As you know, this was a stopover, which is kind of funny, in the U.S. on our way to and from Central America. Okay, so let's read this. Yes. Well, he's definitely a controversial figure, of course. He's a very divisive figure, meaning that there are people who really, really support him and there's people who really, really hate him, right? It seems like it's almost hard to find somebody who's in the middle, right? When you talk to people, Americans, either they think Donald Trump is amazing or they really hate him. There's no in between. Yeah. Well, I think, again, this is very much depends on where you're coming from, right? I'll just say this, if you think Donald Trump did a good job or you support him, probably you think that, for one thing, his whole campaign was based on the idea that the political establishment in America is very elite and it does not care for ordinary people. And so his idea is that I'm from the outside. I'm going to come in and I'm going to change things. I'm going to represent you, the normal American person, what you need. I'm not going to just deal with the people at the top and the people who are very elite and up here. We're just going to help ordinary Americans. And that means economically with your jobs, we're going to boost the economy. Of course, he had this whole idea of, of course, the slogan, Make America Great Again, right? Many Americans say MAGA, right? Abbreviated MAGA, they say MAGA. So Make America Great Again was his slogan. And of course, he had this very nationalistic idea, this strong, make America strong again, make America great again. So if you think that's what America needs and you support that, of course you think Donald Trump probably did a good job. But if you don't like his, of course, the big problem, I think, was at the very end of his presidency when he disputed the election outcome, and there was this big protest in Washington, D.C. So a lot of Americans don't like that. They think, well, that's not the right thing to do. That's not constitutional. It damages our democracy. And the people that don't like Donald Trump, I think they feel that he was very he wasn't very democratic. I mean, he didn't act in it. It was almost like he was trying to gain the power for himself and keep that power. And, so there's many, again, he's a very divisive figure. I have friends that absolutely hate Donald Trump. Every time I mention his name comes up, it's just everything is negative. But I will say, I have other friends that think he's great. They think we need a leader like that. He should be back in power. They should bring him back again. So I think this the whole issue with his arrest, or not his arrest, basically, his indictment was very, very divided again, very controversial. So let's read this. Ty arrived in Los Angeles on Tuesday night after visiting New York, Guatemala, and Belize. Okay. She was scheduled to meet with McCarthy at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library let's say it last part. Presidential Library in Simi Valley at 10 a.m. McCarthy's office said. In 1979. What does sever mean? This word sever? Okay, yeah, to cut. Often, or to chop, If you say, oh, he was in an accident and his arm was severed, it means his arm was cut off. But if you say, I'm going to sever my relationship, it has a strong idea. It's like it's chopped, it's cut very completely, not a little bit, completely. Now, keep in mind that this word sounds very similar to another word, severe, right? Severe means very serious, right? But this word sever means to cut, okay? So let's say both those words, sever, severe. I think back in about 20 years ago or so, there was a Newt Gingrich, was a former Speaker of the House. He came to Taiwan, Republican, and then Nancy Pelosi, and then this is the third time. So they will issue a joint statement, of course, Now, of course, again, here, everything's talking about the future. So it says would issue. I guess we could say will issue, right? Would issue a joint statement after the closed door meeting. Now, of course, this meeting is not open to 记者, right? And it's a private meeting. So if we say we had a closed door discussion, it means a private discussion. Okay, so closed door meeting, while lawmakers who take part would, again, here's that would because it hasn't happened yet, would hold a news briefing in the afternoon. Now, you might ask, why don't we use the word will? It's mainly because of this phrase here, the office said. This is a quote by them. They said this would happen. If we don't have this, if it's just a statement by itself, we could say will. They will do this, they will do that. But here it's a quote. It's saying the office said they would do this, okay? So that's why we use the word would instead of will here, okay? What? Yeah, I think it means McCarthy's office. That's the statement. Yeah. No, I think there it would just seem a little bit strange. I think you would say could. Yeah, could happen. This could happen, But here, because it's a state, they said this would happen. I said I would help him if he needs my help. I said I would go to Taipei when he called me. So here it says they would do this according to the office said. Okay. So if it's definitely going to happen and there's no statement, we say this will happen. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. Ty and McCarthy would issue a joint statement after the closed door meeting. Have met with a House Speaker since Taipei and Washington severed diplomatic ties. let's say those last three words, severed diplomatic ties in 1979. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, mutual means shared. We share, like we can say we have a mutual agreement, or we mutually, it's more like there's a slight difference. Mutual means like you share, we share the same ideas, or we share something. But joint means it was created together. So like a joint statement means they sat down and they actually created something together. Whereas mutual might be something that we agree. We say we have mutual ideas about freedom or democracy. It just means you have that same idea as I do, but it's not something that we created together. So that's where joint, it means like we did this together. Okay, it was a joint effort. It was a joint statement. It was a joint project. Yeah, so slightly different. Okay, it says the first meeting occurred in 1997 when then House Speaker Newt Gingrich met with then President Lee Teng-hui in Taipei. And the second took place in August last year when then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with Tsai, also in Taipei. So again, we use this word then because it means at that time. Of course, Lee Teng-hui is not the president now, and Newt Gingrich is not the House Speaker now. So, and neither is Nancy Pelosi. Lee Teng-hui in Taipei. And the second took place in August last year when then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with Tsai, also in Taipei. Okay, that's a photo caption. So it says Presidential Office Deputy Secretary General Xavier Zhang would not disclose the list of U.S. lawmakers who were to attend the Tsai McCarthy meeting when asked about the issue aboard the president's charter flight on the way to Los Angeles. So he's the Fu Mishu-zhang, I guess. This is an interesting word. It's a Spanish name, but it's quite common. I mean, I shouldn't say it's popular, but it's common. I've seen it. It's pronounced with a Z, so we say Xavier. So we say Xavier. Yeah, Xavier. Yeah. Yeah, Xavier. Yeah. I have no idea. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it means savior or something. I don't know, but I'm just guessing. Yeah. I'm sure it means something. But yeah, it's, I believe, Spanish. So yeah, it says would not disclose. What does disclose mean? Yes, reveal would be a good word. To reveal, R-E-V-E-A-L, reveal, right? I'm going to reveal something or disclose something. It means to yeah, talk about it. So why don't we say it again? Disclose. Disclose. So he would not reveal or he not disclose the list of U.S. lawmakers who were to attend the Tsai McCarthy meeting when asked about it, the issue or this question aboard the president's charter flight. What's a charter flight or what does that mean? Yeah, you rent it. Now, of course, they don't. She's on a Huahang airplane, right? She doesn't. That's not the presidential airplane, but they chartered it. So it's very interesting. You don't see this too much in Taiwan, but in America, it's very common to see like these buses, and in the front of the bus where it says where the bus is going, like in Taiwan, you might see Taichung, Taipei, or something like that, but it will just say charter, okay, and that means that a private group, has rented this bus. So it's not like a bus that's going on a scheduled bus route to some place. It's chartered. It's being used by somebody. It's being rented by somebody. So we can have a chartered bus or a chartered flight. But it's funny, we don't normally use this word for your private, personal, like car or something. You don't say, I have a chartered car. You have a rental car, right? I'm renting this car. Sometimes we say leasing a car, L-E-A-S-E. But lease, when we lease a car, it has the idea of usually being a longer term rental, not short term. So become very common in America. I don't know about Taiwan, but they're something. And this has actually become very common in America. I don't know about Taiwan, but there are more and more people that instead of buying the car, they'll have a long-term lease. So they'll sign maybe a 2-year contract to lease a car, and then when it's done, they give it back and they lease another car. And the the agreement is such that the cost is not too much different from buying a car, right? Because most people in America, when they buy a car, they do the 分期付款, right? We say installment payment. We say sometimes to pay on installment or installment payment. So that's like 分期付款, right? You pay every month. So some people think, well, if I'm going to pay every month, and by the time I'm done paying, the car is already old, right? Maybe I want to get rid of it. So why don't I just lease the car? I still pay every month, but then the 好处, the advantage is I can get a new car. Maybe every 2 years or 3 years, I can just say, okay, I'm giving this car back. I'm going to get another car. So yes. No, I don't think so. You can't tell. I mean, I don't think you can. With rental cars, sometimes people can tell. I think there's a certain, it's not like they have a special license plate on a rental car, but sometimes I think there's certain clues that will tell people that's a rental car, and I'm not quite sure what they are. But anyhow, yeah. So anyhow, a lease is more usually long car. Now you could also lease a property or a house or something like that, just like you can rent a car or rent a property. But the word charter is more for things like a bigger transportation, like a bus or an airplane or a boat or a ship, I should say. With charter. Of course, as a 动词, you say they chartered with the ed, chartered. They chartered this flight. Okay, so let's read this together. Presidential Office Deputy Secretary General. I want to say last 3 words. Deputy Secretary General Xavier Zhang would not disclose the list of U.S. lawmakers who were to attend the Ty McCarthy meeting. When asked about the issue aboard the president's charter flight on the way to Los Angeles. Right. Yeah, I was just thinking about that because I still, it's still a little bit awkward. I was watching, of course, the news, and you see her plane come in, and it still says China Airlines on it. And I was just thinking, hopefully, I hope that when people see this in the news, foreigners, it helps them understand that China Airlines actually belongs to Taiwan and not China, right? Because that still is a great that creates a lot of confusion. When people see China Airlines, they think, well, wait a minute, isn't that from China? And but yeah, it's but I understand China Airlines Huahang, their position too, because that's their trademark, right? That's their brand. They own that name, right? That's why in China they have to use the name Air China. They can't use the name China Airlines because Huahang owns that name. So but it does create some confusion sometimes. Okay, so it says here, wow, there's a long name. I'll just read this. I don't think we have to read this paragraph, but I'll read it to you. It says, however, a source told the Central News Agency that Republican U.S. Representative Mike Gallagher, who chairs a new House Select Committee on China and who visited Taiwan in February, and Democratic U.S. Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, a senior member of the China Committee, would be in attendance. So basically somebody, a source, so when we say a source, it means somebody who has information, told them that these two people, Republican U.S. Representative Mike Gallagher, so he chaired, when we say chairs, that becomes a 动词, and that means he's the head. He's the chairman, right? So, of course, it's a neutral word. And I think I've told you before today, of course, instead of saying chairman, often we can say chairwoman if it's a woman, or if we want a neutral word, we can actually use the word chair as a 名词. We can say she is the chair of this committee. He is the chair of this committee. And then we use the word chair, which maybe sounds a little bit strange to you, but we can use that word chair instead of chairman or chairwoman. But they're all okay. So this guy chairs this new House Select Committee. It's a special 委员会, a committee on China. And then there's a Democrat representative, Raja Krishnamurthy, which when I see that name immediately, I think this guy, or I think it's Indian. That's an Indian name, Hindu. A senior member, so he's a high-ranking member of this China committee, would be in attendance, means they would attend this meeting. Okay. Yeah. Because there is a quote, a source told, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, because, okay, so there's two kinds of quotes. There's a direct quote, which uses quotation marks, and it's the words, the actual words that somebody says. But there's another kind of quote, which is an indirect quote, which has no quotation marks. For example, I'll give you an example. If you say, Douglas said, I am tired today, and I put quotation marks. I am tired today. Those are my actual words, so I use quotation mark. Quotation mark. That's an indirect quote. It's not using my actual words. So whenever there's quotation marks, that means that those are the actual words, the exact words that person used. But here we're not using their exact words, but it is still a quotation. It's still quoting them. Okay, whether it's Xavier Zhang or this other person here, a source, of course. This is not who, but somebody. Okay, so let's keep going here. We don't have to read that paragraph. So I'll read this. China has objected to the meeting, warning it would take resolute measures to protect its sovereignty. Okay. Okay, there's a photo caption. Let's just read this. Let's look at this real quick then. Of course, if you object to something, it means you're against it, right? You can say, I object to him doing that. I object to you saying that. It means I oppose. I'm against it. So it's a ming. Now, of course, if you want to turn that into a ming, so it's objection. He made. Often we say he made or gave an objection to something. Okay, so it means I said something against that. So why don't we say it together? Objected to. Objected to. Objection. Objection. Okay, so China has objected to this meeting, warning that it would take resolute measures. Okay, now what does resolute mean? Yeah, I'd say probably that's the best word. Determination, determined. Okay, if you do something resolutely, it means you do something with a strong determination. I will definitely do this. I will act with determination, with strength, with power. Okay, so of course, if you make a statement, a strong statement about something, or often we say that statement, we call that a resolution. Okay, remember I'm sure we talked about this at New Year's. We make New Year's resolutions, right? What is that? It's a statement to say, I will do this. This is my goal. Of course, most people forget their New Year's resolutions, but we call it a resolution. It's something that I am determined to do. Okay, so why don't we say together, resolute. Resolute, and then as a means, so resolution. Resolution. So they said they will take strong measures or resolute. They believe that they claim the Taiwan is their sovereign territory. Okay, so let's read this together. China has objected to the meeting, warning that it would take resolute measures to protect its sovereignty. Okay. So here we go on. It says Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman Mao Ning on Monday said that Beijing strongly opposes any form of official interaction and contact between the U.S. side and Taiwan authorities. So you can see here they use quotation marks because these are her actual words. She actually used these words, okay? Now, this kind of quotation, we call this basically call this a partial quotation because that's good journalism, good journalistic words. Okay, so this is the Waijiaobu, spokeswoman. Beijing strongly opposes any form, means any kind of official interaction. Now, of course, interaction is like exchange, or you're interacting with people. Right now, I'm interacting with you, right? So why don't we say together, interaction. Interaction. To interact. To interact. Okay, between U.S. side and Taiwan authorities. Okay, let's read this then. Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman Mao Ning on Monday said that Beijing strongly opposes any form of official interaction and contact between the U.S. side and Taiwan authorities. Authorities. Right. So authorities would be another word for what? Well, but what's a replacement word for authorities? Starts with an O. Officials, yeah. Authorities, officials, yeah. Okay. So let's go on. It says, Presidential Office spokeswoman Lin Yuzhan said that China is not in a position to meddle in the matter because Taiwan and its 23 million people have the right to engage with other democratic nations. Okay, so this is on the Taiwan side. Now, there's a word here I don't know if we've ever talked about. Meddle. What does meddle mean, this word here? Yeah, if you get involved with something, but usually if you meddle in something, it has a negative meaning to it. Like you are interfering, or you are, you're sticking your nose in other people's business, right? We say to meddle. Okay, so the pronunciation is like the word, like metal, like you wear metal, M-E-D-A-L, metal. But here it's meddle, means it's a verb, to meddle. If you say that person likes to meddle in other people's business, it means they like to stick their nose in other people's business. Okay, so why don't we say together, meddle. Meddle. Okay, so here again we have a partial quotation, right? Because they're using this partial part of a sentence. China is not in a position. They have no right. They're not in a position to meddle in this matter because Taiwan and its people have the right to engage with other. Now, of course, when we say engage, this would be another good word for the word we just talked about, interact, right? We talked about, say engage. This would be another good word for the word we just talked about, interact, right? We talked about interacting with each other, engaging with each other. It means to have some sort of a connection or involvement with others. Now, of course, engagement has a totally different meaning, like we say ding hun, right? But here it means just to have an interaction with other democratic countries. Okay, so let's read this. Presidential Office spokeswoman, what is that? Lin Zhan, right? Chan, okay. Lin Yuchan said that China is not in a position to meddle in the matter, have the right to engage with other democratic countries. Right. Okay. Here it says, U.S. National Security Council spokesman reiterated the U.S. position, cautioning China not to overreact, U.S. media reported. Okay. Okay. So we've talked about this before. What does reiterate mean? Yeah, saying something again. Okay. If you reiterate your belief in something, means I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it one more time. Okay. So why don't we say it together? Reiterated. Reiterated. Yes. Yeah, it is, I believe, but it's not a word we use very often. Iteration. Yeah, it's not a word, and I don't even believe it means to state something. To be honest, I'll have to go and look that word up. It's no. I think it's almost like a version of something, a type of something. Okay. But yeah, anyhow, reiterate is a much more common word. It means just to say something again. So he reiterated the U.S. position that they're on this situation. Cautioning, of course, he's cautioning, he's kind of like warning China not to overreact. Now, of course, I think you know what overreact means, right? We react to things, but if we overreact, then it's too much, right? If someone overreacts to a mistake, maybe they make a big fuss out of it. They say too much. So why don't we say together, overreact? Overreact. Okay, so he's saying don't overreact to this meeting. Of course, like he pointed out, this is not the first time that the president of Taiwan has gone to the visit. I think this is her 7th time or 6th time. I don't know, but she's been there many times over the last several years. So yeah. Of course, it is the first time she's meeting the Speaker of the House on U.S. soil, but it's not, the visit itself is nothing unusual. Okay, so let's read this. U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby reiterated the U.S. position, cautioning China not to overreact. Overreact to the meeting, U.S. media reported. Okay, that's a photo caption, but it says here, okay, let's read these 2 paragraphs, and then I think we'll be done for this story. Okay, it says, we've certainly seen some rhetoric coming out of Beijing with respect to President Tsai Ing-wen's transit, Kirby said. He said Tsai and every other previous president of Taiwan has transited the United States. So there's nothing uncommon here. There's nothing atypical about it, and there's no reason for the Chinese to overreact. Okay, so there's a couple phrases and words here. First of all, what is rhetoric? What would be another word for rhetoric? This sounds like what? Maybe even more. There's even more basic word for this. What? Comment, but I think probably the best word for this is simply language, right? So, or speech, okay? Words, okay? I don't think, my Taiwanese friends told me in Taiwan they do not teach this, but in America, in high school, not all high schools, but some, they actually have a class called rhetoric. And it's a class that teaches you how to speak publicly. So how to make speeches, how to give 演讲, right? When I was in high school, actually, when I was in high school, it wasn't a specific class, but it was a part of my English class. We had a special section or unit on rhetoric, on speaking. And it was quite interesting. We had to actually, as part of this section, we had to give different kinds of speeches. So one speech, for example, was an introductory speech, like we were introducing something or presenting something. Another speech was like a debate, like we had to convince the audience of something, like we had to make an argument, not to argue, but to make an argument about something, like I had to convince you of something, idea, okay? And then I remember another one, which was actually very interesting, was called, I'll actually write it for you. It was called, let me add a new page here. And you might see this word here and there. Does everybody know what impromptu means? Yeah. No preparation. So really, I'll tell you what would happen. We would be sitting there and the teacher would be like, okay, this is your subject, this is your subject, this is your subject. You have 3 minutes to think about your speech. So we had to do it impromptu. So if it's impromptu, there's no preparation, there's nothing. So then quickly I had to think about, okay, what am I going to say? And then we just jump up and we make a speech on that topic. Yeah. Yeah. Wing it means just to make it up as you go along. So I winged it. Yeah. So if someone is winging it or they winged it, it means they just made it up as they went along. They just kind of, it's a little bit like impromptu. There's no preparation. There's no planning. You just do it. Okay. So let's say suddenly there's a problem or a situation and you have to fix it and you don't know what to do, but you decide, okay, I'm going to try. And you just start doing it and then making, thinking of what should I do now and what should I do now? We say he's winging it. Okay. Or you're giving a 表演, like a performance, and maybe you don't know what you're supposed to do, so you just start making it up. But impromptu, sometimes we say impromptu speech or impromptu comments, like I'm making impromptu comments to you. I'm just saying something. So it just means there's no preparation. Okay. So why don't we say it together, impromptu? Impromptu, right? Because everyone in the class had to quickly come up with something to say on a special topic. So I think this rhetoric training class was actually very useful because, in life, you have to do that sometimes, right? You have to make a speech, you have to say something to a group of people. So I think it was good preparation. But here, of course, we say, I've seen some language, I've seen some words, I've seen some comments coming out of Beijing. So why don't we say together, rhetoric? Rhetoric. Right. So you might say, oh, he's using very strong rhetoric against somebody. He's using strong language. I think language is probably the best word. Okay, so we've certainly seen some rhetoric coming out of Beijing with respect to President Tsai Ing-wen. Now, of course, this is important. With respect to, you might think, well, wait a minute, Beijing doesn't respect Tsai Ing-wen. But when we say with respect to Tsai Ing-wen, what does that mean here? Concerning, regarding, yes. So when I say I'm going to do this in respect to him, I think that we should do this, or in respect to that situation, I think we should take this action. So when we use the word in that way, regard, I just said it, regarding, we could say concerning or regarding President Tsai Ing-wen. Oops, sorry. I guess we could say in reference to, but I don't think that would work as well here. I mean, it wouldn't sound as smooth. In reference to, referring to. But yeah, it's easier to simply say rhetoric coming out of Beijing concerning President Tsai Ing-wen or regarding President Tsai Ing-wen or with respect to President Tsai Ing-wen. Yeah, it means just, yeah. So this has nothing to do with respect, you know, like showing respect to somebody. Okay. So, yeah. Tsai Ing-wen's transit. You know what transit means, right? If you've ever flown to another country, often you don't go directly there. You have to transit another airport or country to get there. You have to maybe stop in, I don't know. When I fly back to America, often, not always, but often I transit through Japan or Korea, right? You fly to Seoul or you fly to Tokyo and you stop there for a few hours and then you go on to the United States. So why don't we say together transit? Transit. Okay. So he said that Tsai and every other previous president before of Taiwan has transited the United States. So there's nothing uncommon here. There's nothing unusual. It's the same idea. Atypical, uncommon, unusual. So if something, of course, you know what the word typical means, right? Typical means normal, 平常, right? This is a typical day for me. But if we say this day was very atypical, it means there was something different. There was something unusual. This was not normal, okay? Now, I know you're probably thinking of the word abnormal, but abnormal has almost a more of a slightly negative feeling to it. Abnormal, not normal. Yeah, whereas atypical just means it does not follow the normal pattern, okay? I guess those two words are similar, but atypical has more of a neutral sound to it. Abnormal just sounds like something went wrong, like there was a problem, okay? There was something, you know, there was some sort of 毛病, right? Okay, so yeah, why don't we say together atypical? Atypical. Okay, so let's read these two paragraphs and then we'll go to a different story. We've certainly seen some rhetoric coming out of Beijing with respect to President Tsai Ing-wen's transit. Transit, Kirby said. He said Tsai and every other previous president of Taiwan has transited the United States. So there's nothing uncommon here. There's nothing atypical about it. And there's no reason for the Chinese to overreact. Overreact. Right. Okay. Any questions about this article before we go on to a different story? Okay. Yeah, we'll see if the Chinese overreact or not. I hope not. Yeah, it's yeah, sure. About what? Oh, sorry. Yeah, they met. Yeah. I went online this morning and they did meet. But of course, this article is from yesterday's newspaper. No, this morning's newspaper. But of course, the newspaper was put out last night, so they hadn't met yet. But yeah, you were saying? Yeah. Not really. We just, contiguous just means that they are together. They're connected to each other. So, and what are the other two non-contiguous states? Well, I think we'd say non-contiguous. What are the other two? Yeah, Alaska and Hawaii. Yeah, Taiwan. Some people would like Taiwan to be the 51st state. So, yeah. Okay, let's go on to a very different story. Let me see if there's anything else here. This is what we were just talking about. That's I don't want to spend too much time on this story, but let's just quickly look at it a little bit. And then we'll go on to a third story. Does everybody understand what he just said? Contiguous states. Does everybody understand that word, contiguous? I don't think it's a word we've learned before. What does it mean? I'll write it for you in a second. So when we talk about the United States, right, all the American states, we talk about, I think I'm spelling this right. Contiguous means that they're connected to each other, right? So in America, we have 48 states. There's 2 states that are not contiguous, right? Not me. I think Canada's in between the Alaska and the other 48 states. Sometimes in America we say the lower 48. Lower 48 means the lower, they're below, right? And then we have Alaska, and then of course Hawaii is an island group. It's an island chain out in the Pacific Ocean. So yeah, why don't we say together? Contiguous. Contiguates. Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah, there's no. Alaska was the 49th state. It was added later on, and then Hawaii is the 50th state. It was the most recent state to be added in 1959, I believe. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if I haven't heard that. I haven't heard the Russians want it back. They sold it to us. And when I think when we bought it, it was very controversial. A lot of people said that's a bad deal. You're wasting money. 浪费钱, right? But it's a good deal, right? It's a big state. If you look at Alaska, it's a lot of resources, a lot of oil. There's a lot of other things up there. So it was a good deal. But yeah, at the time, I don't know if Russia needed money or what, but the U.S. bought it from them. Yeah, very important. And you can see where it is in regards to the Arctic. The northern, up above it, and then of course the Pacific Ocean, northern Pacific, and it's right next to Russia. On Tuesday, lashed out at New York prosecutor Alvin Bragg for bringing criminal charges against him and declared himself the victim of election interference without offering evidence. Evidence. What's evidence again? Do you remember? Yeah, proof, right? If you say you did this, but you have no evidence or no proof, or you should have evidence or proof. So far he hasn't had any evidence. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see the people who really support Donald Trump, this has really mobilized them, right? Now they're more, we say, pumped up, or they really want to support him. So yeah, I don't know. I agree. On a personal level, I feel like everyone needs to be held to the law, right? If you commit a crime, you should be held to law. It remains to be seen, and we don't know. We have to see how this goes. It remains. We have to wait and see if these charges against Donald Trump will stick. We say to stick means they will actually go somewhere, or it doesn't really. Nothing happens, right? It doesn't stick. If charges stick, it means that person is actually probably found guilty. But if they don't stick, or then this case won't go anywhere. In which case, then this could really help Donald Trump, because the people who support him are like, yeah, I agree. They're attacking him politically. So anyhow, it's a very controversial thing, and I don't like one thing. I will say this in general. I don't like things that divide us, our country. And I do feel obviously this is very, very divisive. I don't know if this prosecutor has. Yeah, I think there have been. Of course, a lot of this is is very controversial, but it's very. He made some payments to a woman over. She said, I think he had an affair with her, and so they paid her some. We say under the table. They paid her some money, basically to keep quiet, and so I think that's part of the charge. I haven't studied this case really carefully or closely, but I know there are some things there that are there. But I don't know. The question, of course, is does that result in an official guilty? Can he be found guilty in a court? Yeah. So anyhow, he said, I never thought anything like this could happen in America, Trump told supporters gathered at his Mar-a-Lago home in Palm Beach, Florida. The only crime that I've committed has been to fearlessly defend our nation against those who seek to destroy it. So what does fearlessly mean? What would be another word for fearlessly? Without fear, what would be another word for that? We could say bravely. That's an E. Or the word I was thinking of was courageously. Okay. So I think both these words, instead of fearlessly, of course, fearless means you have no fear. So fearlessly, bravely, courageously, all the same idea. Because be brave means 很勇敢, right? To have courage means also have that, bravery. Of course, bravery, if you want to say as a means. What? Different idea. We would not use it in the same way. We could say if someone is brave, they will dare to do something, but we would not use it like this as a 形容词. But you can say as a 名词, he has courage, he has bravery. He showed courage is something we have, and bravery is usually something that we show, we demonstrate, we show it. Same idea, okay? So why don't we say together, bravery. Bravery. Or we could simply say he is brave, right? He is brave. Okay, so why don't we say together brave? And then bravely. Bravely as a 副词. And then courage. Courage. Courageously. Courageously. Fearless. Fearlessly. Fearlessly. Yes. I guess could, but it has almost like, I feel like to dare or to if someone is daring, or we say, as you said, daringly, it indicates bravery, but it's almost like you're willing to take a risk, because to dare to do something means you're taking a risk to do something. There's 风险, or to do something daringly would indicate that probably that you're brave or courageous, but it could maybe mean you're reckless, right? You're not careful. But yeah, so anyhow, it's a very meaning, but slightly different, I think, in some ways. Yeah, like a daredevil would be someone who takes big risks. So yeah, fearlessly. I think these three words that I just mentioned are probably better words for this use here. So why don't we say one more time, fearlessly. Okay, so he says the only thing I've done wrong is to fearlessly defend our nation. Okay, now of course he's being a little bit sarcastic because it's not a crime to defend your nation. Okay, so defend our nation against those who would seek to destroy, those who want to destroy our nation. Okay, so let's read this. I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Trump told supporters gathered at his Mar-a-Lago home in Palm Beach, Florida. The only crime that I've committed has been to fearlessly defend our nation Let's say that last part again. Fearlessly defend our nation against those who seek to destroy it. Okay. So it says here, earlier, Trump pleaded not guilty in a Manhattan court to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records as prosecutors accused him of orchestrating payments to 2 women before the 2016 U.S. presidential elections to suppress publication of their alleged sexual encounters with him. Okay, so there's some words here. So first of all, he pleaded not guilty. Now, when you're accused or charged in a court, then you have to tell the judge, do you plead? Now, plead normally means to beg, right? I plead. But here it's a different meaning. It's more like, how do I react? How do I respond to this? What's my response? And so you can plead guilty, which means I admit I'm guilty. Okay, I'll tell the judge, okay, I did that. Or you plead not guilty. So the judge will ask you, what's your plea? PLEA. What's your response? How do you react? How do you respond to these charges? And you can say guilty or not guilty. Of course, if you say I'm guilty, well then the judge will say, okay, well then here's what we're going to do. But if you say not guilty, then it has to go through that process. So he's saying he's not guilty. Of course, guilty or guilt means 犯罪. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we say together, guilty. Guilty. Right. And we use the word guilty in many ways, right? If someone says, did you take my, what he's being charged with, falsifying business records. Now, business record be like your 记录 company, right? Your business, every company has its records, right? So falsifying business records, of course, means it's not real. It's not true, right? You changed it, or you wrote something that was false in your business records. Now, 34 counts, that means different charges, right? This is a legal word we use in court. How many counts? Charged with something. There's 2 basic kinds of criminal charges, okay? I'll write. That's spelled right. Misdemeanor. Okay, I think that's correct. So misdemeanor is like a minor crime, a smaller crime, right? And so if you get charged with a misdemeanor, probably, and you're guilty, then probably the penalty is smaller. Like maybe you fine, or usually I don't think you go to prison for a misdemeanor. Okay, but a felony is more serious. That'd be a more serious crime. You could actually go to prison. You could go to jail. Whereas I think misdemeanors often you pay a fine. It's not big. And I don't know exactly which crimes fall into the misdemeanor category. Which, I mean, obviously if you murder somebody, that's a felony. So yeah. So why don't we say it together? Misdemeanor. Felony. And sometimes you'll see the word, if someone is found guilty of a serious crime, we could call them a criminal, right? But sometimes you'll also see the word felon. Okay? And felon means somebody who has been guilty. It's like criminal, but they've been found guilty of committing or doing a felony. Okay? So we call them a felon. If you want to be very specific, we could say a convicted felon. Convicted means the court has found you guilty. Okay, you were convicted of this crime. They found, after going through the court case, they decided that you were guilty, so you are convicted of a crime. Now, you can be accused of a crime, you can be charged with a crime, but you're not guilty yet, right? But if you're guilty, if you're found guilty, then you are convicted of a crime. Oh, which is a good word too, because another word for criminal is convict. Yeah. So if you say he is a convict, it means he has been. Now, I think I heard you just say a word that we use sometimes. If you say he is an ex-con, or convict, okay? But we use sometimes for short, we say ex-con. It means that you were previously a criminal, and maybe you went to jail or something happened, and then you came out of prison. You've finished your penalty. You've done it. You've paid the price, and now you're out. Okay. I don't know if this is still true, but I remember a long time ago, and I'm not trying to say something bad about this group of people, but I've heard this long time ago, not recently, but I used to heard that one very popular job for ex-cons or ex-convicts in Taiwan was taxi driver. I don't know if that's true, but I heard this before. Now, maybe that's not true now, and I don't want to say bad things about taxi drivers. I use taxis all the time, and they're fine. But I heard a long time ago when I was in high school, people said, oh yeah, some taxi drivers are ex-convicts. Yeah, maybe. Probably not now. I pass a, so it's like a no criminal record. Right. So it is true. Then now today there's probably most taxi drivers are not ex-convicts. But yeah, and I've had very good conversations with taxi drivers, and they don't seem like ex-convicts. They seem like normal people just trying to make some money. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we say together, convicted felon. Convicted felon. Convict. Convict. Ex-convict. Yeah, so these are very common terms. Again, you've been found guilty of a crime. Okay, so here it says he pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, as prosecutors accused him or charged him of orchestrating payments to two women. Now, when you say to orchestrate, this is a 动词. What does that mean? Orchestrate. Yeah, it's another word for organizing. Arrange, organize, right? If you organize or you arrange something, it means you put it together. And what is an orchestra? What is a 交响乐团, right? So it's almost like you are the conductor. You're organizing the orchestra. So if you say he orchestrated, or I'm going to orchestrate, that means I'm going to organize, or arrange something. I'm in charge. I'm the conductor. Okay? So why don't we say together, orchestrating. Orchestrating. The funny thing is, when we talk about music, like, we don't say he orchestrated. I mean, we could, I guess, but usually if you're the strange. Let me just erase something. Okay, we have a malfunction here. Anyhow, so let's just try a new page. Maybe it's yeah. Okay, so conduct. I'll just spell it for you. CONDUCT. Okay, CONDUCT. And if you are a conductor, that's a person. See, with the OR at the end, conductor. So that's the person we say they conducted the music or they conducted the concert. We don't usually say they orchestrated the concert. That's not a word we use for music, even though an orchestra is a 交响乐团. So here it just means to organize or arrange. Okay, so one more time, orchestrating. Orchestrating. So it says they accused him of orchestrating or organizing payments to two women before the 2016 U.S. presidential election to suppress publication of their alleged. Now, again, remember we use the word alleged because we don't know for sure. Alleged sexual encounters with him. So what does suppress mean? We've talked about this before. To silence, to put down, right? So let's say someone has some news or they want to announce something, but you try to suppress that. It means you try to make it quiet. You try to silence it, okay? So you're going to suppress, or someone has an opinion. That's another way we could use the word. Someone has a, 看法 or 想法. Say, he has that opinion, but they're going to try to suppress his opinion. It means they're trying to keep it quiet, okay? So why don't we say together, suppress. Suppress. Okay, I guess we could say silence, to silence their publication, or stop, when we simply say stop publication of their alleged sexual encounters with him. Yes? No. Oppress has a different idea. Oppress is more like the idea of, how do I describe this? Yeah, like if you're a government that's very oppressive, that's OPPRESS, oppressive. Okay, again, OPPRESS. Oppress means to, it's more of a broad idea, like, like we say, like he said, with a government, right? So, for example, we could say North Korea, Behan, is a very, very oppressive government. They stop all, there's no freedom. So when we talk about to oppress, it means to remove somebody's freedom. We could say it's to suppress a freedom of a whole country. So oppress has a very broad meaning. We don't usually use it for an individual person. We might say that country is oppressive, or this is an oppressive system or government. We could say that very often. Some people would say China is a very oppressive government, okay? Or system, okay? So suppress is more of a individual thing. I'm going to suppress his opinion or his speech or in this case, it's what? Publication, okay? They were going to print this. They were going to, I don't know, maybe write a book about this. And they tried to suppress the publication of this writing or this news or this book, whatever it was, article about their alleged sexual encounters with him, okay? Does everybody understand that? Any questions? Secret payments to these women, that would be, you could falsify, you could change your business records, you could take the money from your company and pay these women and not show it on your business records. Of course, you can't show that on your business records. You can't say, part of our business doing this. So I can see that's probably where they're thinking, oh, we're gonna get him for this. We're gonna get Donald Trump for this one. Well, yeah, and so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you're correct. In my thinking, that's my business, right? But I don't know. Maybe there's a way of connecting this money to his company, right? There's a way of connecting this money to his company, right? Maybe the money, I don't know. Maybe the money, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe this is why they have to go to court to decide all this. Sorry, you were saying something? Yes, that's a very good word. So that's a common word, hush money. Hush is H-S-H, H-U-S-H. So hush, what does hush mean? Make someone quiet. So especially it seems, or you try to hush them up. It means you try to make them quiet, okay? So let's say you have some 小孩子 and they're running around and making lots of noise, and you say hush, means be quiet, or I need to hush, or just be quiet. Hush, yeah. It's a very common word. So why don't we say together hush, hush. Okay, so here he used the word hush money. Hush money is exactly this kind of money. It's like when someone is going to put something out that makes you look bad, or makes your company or something look bad. It might damage you. So you secretly pay them money to keep quiet. And we say they paid hush money to him or her or whatever. Okay, so that's a good expression, hush money. Why don't we say together, hush money? Hush money. Okay, so let's read this. Trump pleaded not guilty in a Manhattan court to 34 felony counts. Felony counts of falsifying business records as prosecutors accused him of orchestrating payments to two women before the 2016 U.S. presidential election to suppress publication of their alleged sexual encounters with him. Okay, and that's a photo caption. Okay, so it says here, Trump running for the Republican presidential nomination next year on Tuesday night in Florida gave a relatively short speech, 25 minutes, compared with his rally speeches that can sometimes last 2 hours. So yeah, I didn't realize the speeches were that long. So when we say relatively short, what's another word we could use instead of relatively? Yeah, comparatively. You know, compare, C-O-M-P-A-R-E means 比较, right? So if we want to turn the word into, well, here would be a 副词. We say comparatively. So it'd be C-O-M-P-A-R-I-V-E. Wait. Compare. C-O-M-P-A-R. Yeah, comparatively. Okay, with an L-Y. Yeah. So comparatively short. Relatively short means when we 比较. Of course, here we're saying 比较 with his, compared to his 2-hour speeches. This one was relatively short. I've never sat through one of his speeches or even watched one of his speeches. I don't know. I just feel like sometimes he says the same things over and over again. Of course, many politicians do this, right? They say the same stuff over and over and over again. So after a while, it's a little bit 无聊, right? But yes, I really don't know. Okay, so let's read this. And then I think we can probably, that might be our Tuesday night in Florida, gave a relatively short speech. Let's say it again, relatively short speech. 25 minutes compared with his rally speeches that can sum 2 hours. Okay. This paragraph, because there's a good word here. Last 2 hours. Okay. So I want to do this one last paragraph because there's a good word here. He did not call for new protests from his supporters. While he is expected to return to the campaign trail soon, he gave no details of that. So Trump is out on bail. You know what bail is? B-A-I-L. I learned this word a long time ago when I was a teacher in Taichung. It's 招保, right? 交保. Yeah. So bail, B-A-I-L. It means we say he was released on bail or he is out on bail. And we always say on bail or after he paid his bail. But when we use it as like a kind of 形容, so we say he was out or on, released or out on bail, it means he paid bail and they let him go free. Okay. So he can campaign. He can still, go out and, he wants to be president. Does everyone know what a tirade is? Yeah, if you're really angry at somebody, so if you say he gave a tirade or here it's began or launched a tirade, or he against somebody. That means you're just attacking them over and over again, and usually you're very angry and you're saying something. Yes. Well, you could say he lashed out against prosecutors, but tirade is almost like a speech. It's almost like a long statement. Like, it's very strong words, and you're using many words against somebody. Okay, so it's not usually one or two words. It's you're saying a lot. Okay, so why don't we say together tirade? Tirade. Yeah. So if you're very angry about something, and you might give, we often use this expression trail. It's like a road, but or xiaolu, but it's not a real road. It just means to go out and campaign. Yeah. So when you are campaigning, we say you are on the campaign trail, because often you have to go to many places and you have to stop in many cities and see many people. So that's part of your road, your campaign trail. So why don't we say it together? Campaign trail. Okay. So he's expected to go back to that, but he didn't give any details. Okay. So let's read this and then we'll be done. Tirade against prosecutors. He did not call for new protests from his supporters. Expected to return to the campaign trail soon. He gave no details of that. Okay. Case, but I don't like to see this kind of. I mean, of course, if he did something illegal, then he certainly should be held accountable. But it's just such a divisive thing to see a former president in court, and a president who wants to run again, right? So yeah. Okay, well, good. Well, have a good day. Enjoy your spring, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.